So the the week is coming together. I've been working on some demos. I haven't published any yet. Um, so I said last week if I'm not demoing, I need to figure out why. And so I simplified things down to where I needed them, and then I still got stuck on the main piece, which is the process manager, which I think makes a lot of difference. And maybe not under pressure, I could think of it easier, or somebody fresher than me could think about it really clearly. But what I've been doing is I've been replacing some of the more complicated patterns that I'm using with protocols and making, just a more clean class structure so I can figure out what exactly do I need, making sure I can serialize that, in the state models where I need to. But the holdout is the process manager. And it's probably not that big of a deal, but I probably just need to bite the bullet and finish that up. And then what I do have is a strong template that works well until you get into some more complicated use cases. So what I've been doing is I've been building kind of a template code of this is the structure I want. And then I implement risk. I just throw away risk and rebuild the risk service with all of its dependencies and tools and just say, okay, yeah, that's making sense. So I templates working and clear and clean, and then risk is clear and clean up until process manager. So that's kind of where we're at. Um, Thinking a little bit about, you know, what's the context of this? How far along is this coming? Is it too little, too late? That kind of thing. But one of the big things I need to really be clear about is cursor, because they're doing what I wanted to do at a lower level, but could easily do what I'm doing once they see it, right? It's not that hard. It's just that's the necessary part for the things I need to deliver. So it's like, oh yeah, if I just had strong LLMs and really good usability and I build those up really, really well, I'm cursor. And strong integrations with editors and drive things the way cursor does. It's an excellent tool. Like, okay, good. And they're working at bigger and bigger chunks. What I'm doing is I'm going the other way down. I'm saying, look, the reason we do it is we've got so many resources. This is the data contract. This is the conversation. These are the risks. These are the service levels. This is what we have to own when we get there, specifically, measurably, testably done. And then bottom up, I'm building the incubator. And the incubator says, just write code and mock out things that you don't have. Show me how you're going to bridge the gap. And then the coder goes in the middle. And the coder says, cool, I got to target that. I got to do this. I know all my architectural patterns. I know all of the measures and validations that I can run. And so I could use these other tools and connect them probably better. But it's not that hard to duplicate, right? This is just the way I think. How do I do this at a larger and larger level? So the promise I made myself was if I do it, create it as um, a responsive or extend me, create the harness is what I've been calling it for years and years and years. I need a harness where I can get into the thing. So, augmented intelligence is just awareness of functionality that fits where I'm at. But I don't want to be in the place where I'm coding all the time. I want to be in the place where I'm making a decision. This is what's possible today, and this is what's possible soon. We'll get you this now, we'll build you that later. That's the kind of, leadership and engagement that makes sense. So, that's not that big of a deal, I don't think. How I think about it, meaning the harness is not getting in the way, and the way I'm building it, I don't think is a problem. So what is the future when all the capital, all the smartest engineers, all the great, minds are going that way and I'm going this way? Like, well, I have to basically go head to head, toe to toe with somebody that has Cursor and 30 years experience and really clear ideas on their architecture plans and what can they do with their team, with their 40, 50, 500 people that I can't do, or what could I do? But the promise I made myself is when I harness it, that it's got to linearly be able to step up to higher and higher levels until we can get whole domains done right. So that's why conversation facilitation matters. That's why we have rooms and structure around really looking at what are the trade-offs. That's why we use decision tree vectors and figure out whether or not we even want to work with somebody based on their decisions, their outcomes, their values. What are they about? So that we can actually collaborate faster and clearly about like, hey, I'm not playing a zero sum game here and I'm not fucking around and I'm not renegotiating these things and I'm not changing my company's trajectory and I'm not changing my position in the community. But if you can contribute as a partner and you're cohesive with what I'm doing, come on board. We'll just take it for granted that you're on board. And if you start showing up a different way, I've already got protocols on rooms and conversations to facilitate, hey, what's going on? Explain to some simulacra agent why you think you can, you know what I mean? Like handle it in a way where it's an efficient way to linearly scale up. So we're dealing with the complexities of organizations, complexities of dynamic um, interests, complexities of change that we couldn't have predicted, the complexities of, other ideas and possibilities that we didn't come up with. So to be able to linearly scale through that kind of a system is what is designed here, and I think this is well structured for that. But it's a little difficult to like, okay, demo first, but I still don't have my demos, right? So it feels like an accountable moment. So what do I do differently going forward? Well, what accountability means to me is that I got here by choosing to clean up the infrastructure rather than to deliver the demos. And I kept it scaled back, but I chose to do that. I chose to do that because I'm relying on it going forward. I'm relying on it going forward because of this commitment to linearly scalable. The value of the linearly scalable versus a 1 week's, few deliveries, few days delivery, a few days delay is worth it to me. But if I'm saying the same thing week after week after week, if I say this again next week, then at what point does it not make sense to keep building infrastructure? So if I bite the bullet and get the process manager where it needs to be, and I can prove the template and risk are working correctly, and I do the refactor on the conversation, the conversation service, question service, the entity service, the service level service, um, room, protocol, maybe process manager service, actually having that abstraction. That's the one that's the hardest. That's the one that's slowing me down right now. So how do I make sure it's both a serializable thing and a class that's not a piece of garbage at the speed I'm going with all of the things. I did actually do a really clean, beautiful refactor, and I was really proud this week on the process manager getting just simpler. No more rules, clean stages. It's working cleaner. I'm using clean predicates everywhere, consistent lookup everywhere, consistency. I did a refactor on the catalog factory, and that thing is really good and leads me cleanly into not catalog factory, command factory. That leads me really cleanly into catalogs. So I'm feeling great about just about everything. Um, Software development can be hard. So anyway, so what do I say? I say we're good. It's mostly a win this week. I would rather have these demos than to have these conversations about how the infrastructure works. I'd rather replace long conversations with short, quick demos that are useful that way. And then when I get to a certain milestones, I've got two or three big milestones, maybe big milestones. And then it's probably while I'm doing other things, I'll talk about what's running in the background, how those conversations, schedulers, and coders are really coordinating with what I need built. And then I'm actually just doing architectural work, design work, and proofs, building out things in the incubator. And then the grunt work should mostly look cursor-like. And then, of course, with MCP, if cursor's got that, I might be able to extend the thing I'm asking for into a cursor integration, maybe. I haven't looked into that. Meaning I'm not behind, I don't think, the curve, what everybody else is doing. I'm valuing the things I need to be able to scale. Um, so we'll get conversation going. We'll get 5 or 6 of these major service groups out. That should get me into, well, let me read you the list real quick. I'm not going to share my screen because I don't know where it is on my screen. I've got sensitive information open. So yeah, so we're doing the conversation piece now, and we're doing more branch networks planning. So that's coming together beautifully. We're starting in a Docker environment there and making sure everything works, but we're pushing into the new thing this week is the service discovery tools. I've got a few layers. So we're pushing instead, right now, all my adapters are all in memory in the incubator, and I'm pushing that into Postgres. And the reason for that is that the incubator will also then have and know and abstract the platform information. It doesn't mean that all of the platform targets are going to go to Postgres, but it's a good middle of the road. I can do anything with Postgres. So I'm using classical mapping. I'm using some service discovery layers so I can switch things around. Got a structure for Docker that the branch networks tools will build the Docker environments, and they'll also build packages out of subsets of what's in the incubator. So I have standalone packages and their Docker environments and the Postgres service switcher that says this is how I run the service in Docker containers in Postgres with reliable volumes, at least in local development. And so that gives me not only a structure of what could work if we just want to go with the default, but also we're starting to gather operational data on the service levels for what that is. So that's what the branch networks planning's developing right now, is making sure that we have process managers for all of that and that those are evolving correctly into offers, choices, flows, services, or operations. Just turn the thing into an executable on ramp to I go from the conversation of what the incubator is doing into the runtime environment for the cloud, and then that's pushing into OpenStack. So we start with Docker containerization so that we can prove it, see it, and then we can deal with either Kubernetes or other types of orchestration. And then we can deal with the durability questions, and we can deal with the architecture questions, and we can push into whatever it needs to be. We can actually, in the coder, eventually, we'll actually pick other languages, Python just because it's Python, but there's good reasons for JVM and Beam support at least, and probably actually Clojure. I think on the JVM, I think is where we're going. That's where I was planning on going, and I think that still stands. So coder gets better, but that's not an immediate planning phase. It's just so you kind of know. But anyway, so then we've got this branch networks thing going. We've got a pretty sophisticated trader use cases coming together, and they're going straight into the conversation piece and then using the gateway and dealing with that for the investor libraries and some of the simulation tools that the day trading tools need to use. So that's coming from an experienced day trader and his network of people. So that was an exciting use case coming out of the incubator. So that's going on. Monday's the next follow-up on that one. And then I'm pushing on conversation in this order right now. conversation, process manager, service level, outcome, observer, risk, and offer. That chunk right there says the incubator is working correctly, but also the core Rabbit tools can be brought back into here in a simple form. And they're actually going to be used as a refactoring tool when I'm ready to come back, wash back out of the incubator back into Rabbit's Gate and bring all that stuff back in, having the coder having built it that far. And then we go from there. The next group is agreement, capacity, and choice. That really gets me into stages on capacity and capacity planning, but we're looking at inputs and outputs of anything. So process manager, choice, offer, flow, service, operation. That's what's driving the agreement. So what we're literally saying is, this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to provide. This is the net gain loss of what that is. And we prefer agreements that have multiplier effects, where I say, because of the tools I have, I can gain velocity where I need it. And then, of course, reinforcement learning and dynamic programming can come in there and help us plan out the critical paths and the dependencies and the choices we're making on how the components get built up, not just internal, but for other projects. So now we're saying, whatever we're agreeing to work on, we're looking for that hinge benefit, where it's we want to see it not linear growth or just, a small incremental gains for every effort we put in, but we're looking for something that not only builds now, but it can be reused a lot later. And that's why the conversation is so critical, is that we really need to go in and ask hard questions about, what do we actually want? What would we actually pay for? What do we have? What resources do we have to put into something? Why is this a priority now? What are the unmitigated risks that we've got to address? So that's why we're building it this way, so that it's an intelligent or an aware and functional approach to the problems that we're facing. So anyway, so we get all the way in through choice, but having capacity at the core of it. And then we're going to go ahead and build the capacity scheduler. Now that one started out with ADHD in mind and overload in mind and depression and anxiety. And the modern human mind can't possibly survive what we're putting it in. So we take a breath and we make sure there is room for what we're doing. And then that drives us to delegation. What it really does is say, look, there's a part of us that's out of alignment that wants to do things in the wrong order, in the wrong pace, in the wrong volume. Don't handle this way, grow that way. Do not schedule me when I'm handling my stuff. Do not ask what I won't give you. And then I can worry less about executive function and more about just the task at hand. So that's why I think, so once we really know what the capacity is and how we're measuring and what possible things could work for this brain versus that brain, or this schedule versus that schedule, or this demand versus that demand, when we're getting real with what that is, then capacity scheduler can just have literally just a gateway into Google Calendar for now and block out and move time that fits the realities of, this is more demanding, this is losing priority, this is gaining priority, those kinds of things, and just keep a calendar smart but tied to not just financial and physical time, or real time, but like also emotional availability and rest and maintenance. And it's any entity though too. So this is maintenance on trucks and getting the oil changed to the car and keeping the fridge full. And, it's the things that just happen. So we really are driving some of our harder proofs are not software development. Software development just happens to be easily validatable. So we start there. But what we really want is this ambient net, this ambient interface where operations, logistics, real life things are about right, you know. So this is just manufacturing, manufacturing planning, and you know, keeping things just in time and keeping inventories balanced and understanding supply chains and supply nets and what's really going on. So that's this is where we're going. Um, and down and down and down and down. Well, I'll leave it there. But there's it's all demos from here. As far as I can see, it's the only things important for me to be doing for quite a while is demoing what we can do, and it should go kind of fast. So good week, clean infrastructure cleanups, a lot of a lot more code this week than last week, probably two, three times more code this week than last week, better code this week than last week. Last week was a stellar week for me from coming out from where I'm coming from. So I'll take that. And and then just demo, demo, demo. Okay. That's it for the week.